Guyana's elections body finally advises the president on the earliest possible time for the polls. Our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Thursday, September 19th. From the CMC News Center in Bridgetown, I'm Ricardo Roberts. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Guyanese are now awaiting an announcement from President David Granger about when they will go to the polls now that he has received the advice from the Guyana Elections Commission, GECOM, which he said needed to decide on an election date. GECOM Chairman retired Justice Claudette Singh Thursday morning informed him that the elections body will be ready to host regional and general elections by the end of February next year. She said she considered all objective factors before informing President Granger that the Commission will be able to deliver credible elections by that timeline. In a letter to President Granger, the GECOM chair said she was cognizant that he and the nation were anxiously awaiting the specific information in relation to GECOM's readiness to conduct credible elections in the shortest possible time. Granger is now expected to name an election date based on the timeline presented by the GECOM chair. He summoned his ministers to an emergency meeting to discuss the letter from the GECOM chairman, but he declined to tell the media the contents of the correspondence, saying he would first meet with his cabinet.
I am going to meet my cabinet and I will not discuss the contents of the communication until I have received the advice of my cabinet.
While the government-nominated GECOM commissioners had put forward a timeline for holding elections by March with an earlier date possible, the opposition had been pushing for the polls to be held by the end of November. They had initially been pushing for elections by March this year after the coalition government lost a no-confidence motion last December, but it was only in June that the Caribbean Court of Justice validated the vote. At a press conference on Thursday afternoon, opposition leader Barrett Jagdeo said he had great faith in the GECOM chair and was now hopeful the elections could be called by Friday.
I have great faith in the fairness and the impartiality of the chair of GECOM. And I don't think that she will do anything to rig the elections, but she's surrounded by a secretariat and she has to rely on a secretariat that is unreliable at best. At best, unreliable. But I think they're more sinister than just being unreliable. They're deliberately feeding her and raising concerns that are extraneous and feeding extended timelines. And it's the same thing, she then has a commission where 3 of the members there they don't want any timeline. That their entire purpose so far has been to frustrate the process. So I sympathize with that. But while sympathizing with that, the situation, and having faith in her impartiality, I expected that she would have remained faithful to what she said to the 2 parties.
Meantime, Jagdeo says his People's Progressive Party, the PPP, will continue protest action against the government until the President Granger announces a date for elections. On Thursday, as Granger delivered an address on the political situation at a private sector luncheon, several PPP supporters raised placards and disrupted him. The president had earlier arrived at Pegasus Hotel to speak at the event organized by the Guyana Manufacturers and Services Association and was met by a vociferous crowd, forcing him away from the hotel's main entrance. His security team then whisked him into the conference room at the hotel through another entrance. Earlier, PPP supporters had also accosted Public Infrastructure Minister David Patterson as he sought to enter the hotel for the event. Meanwhile, President Granger is rejecting claims by foreign diplomats that he is in breach of the Constitution by having not named a date for elections. And he has called on the foreign missions to allow the government to resolve its political issues. In a joint statement on Thursday, the diplomatic representatives of the United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Commission called for the president to set a date for elections immediately. Their call came hours after the GECOM chairman's announcement about for the body's readiness for elections by February 2020. In their statement, the diplomats said that by the government not calling the elections by September 18th, which marked 3 months after the CCJ's ruling. It was now in breach of the Constitution. But Granger reiterated that he had to be advised of GCOM's readiness to conduct an election, and it would be reckless of him to do otherwise.
The government is abiding by the Constitution in the sense that it has allowed the Election Commission, an autonomous agency, to do its work. I have received a letter from the Election Commission chairman, and I should be meeting my cabinet in a few minutes' time to discuss that letter. But the Constitution is very clear on the functions of the Commission. I would be in more grievous breach of the Constitution if I tried to intrude or interfere in the work of the Commission. So I advise the foreign delegations or the foreign missions to allow the government of Guyana to resolve the issues. I have heard from the chairman of the commission, and I'm very confident that the chairman, a very prudent and sober retired judge, will recommend to me a date which the Guyanese people are prepared to accept. But I cannot hold elections unless I receive advice that the commission is ready. I mentioned a few minutes ago that we would end up with an Abuja situation in which the commission was not ready, and elections which were to be held the very day had to be called off.
You're watching Caribbean Newsline. In more news this Thursday, the cleanup in the aftermath of Hurricane Humberto began in Bermuda on Thursday after the storm passed the island overnight, bringing high winds that knocked out power, toppled electricity poles and trees, and blew off some roofs. No massive damage to infrastructure or serious injuries were reported, but schools remained closed and buses were off the road as staff from the Bermuda Electric Light Company worked to restore power to the more than 28,000 residents whose service was disrupted. Roads were also cleared and downed foliage collected. Following Humberto's passing, Premier David Byrd said the island made it through and everyone was safe, and that was most important. He said the advance notice from the Bermuda Weather Service and the clear advisories from the Ministry of National Security allowed Bermuda to prepare for Humberto. National Security Minister Wayne Keynes said Thursday afternoon that the country was already starting to get back on its feet.
The good news is there was no loss of life. Our teams are out and we're putting the country back together again. We have the good news to share with you is that the causeway is now open and the airport is now open. We have just spoken to the officials from Belco, and they have 2,000 homes that are without power. That is so amazing because we have 12,000 homes that have had their power restored. The government offices will open tomorrow. Schools will remain closed tomorrow. The long and short of it is, Bermuda, it's going to take us a minute to get back to 100%, but we're working diligently to get our country up and running. We're depending on you to be mindful on the roads, to be safe as you clean up your neighborhoods.
Forecasters at the National Hurricane Center in Miami say large swells and dangerous surf generated by Hurricane Humberto will continue along the coast of Bermuda during the next day or two, and these could continue to cause coastal flooding. The hurricane is expected to slowly weaken and become a post-tropical cyclone later Thursday night. Meantime, Hurricane Jerry, which is east of the Leeward Islands, is getting stronger. Maximum sustained winds are now 90 miles per hour with higher gusts, and forecasters say Jerry could strengthen during the next day or so before the weakening this weekend. The forecast track for the hurricane puts it north of the northern Leeward Islands Friday. It is expected to pass well north of Puerto Rico on Saturday and well northeast of the southeastern Bahamas on Sunday. In the latest advisory issued at 5 p.m., Hurricane Jerry was located 395 miles east of the Leeward Islands and moving towards the west-northwest at 17 miles per hour. A tropical storm watch remains in effect for Barbuda, Anguilla, St. Martin, St. Barthélemy, and Saba and St. Eustatius. 2 years after suffering the blow of a major storm, Dominica is offering advice to the Bahamas in the wake of Hurricane Dorian, which devastated the island of Abaco and Grand Bahama and killing at least 51 people. Trade Minister Ian Douglas says the island is also sending a team including volunteers and tradesmen to help with the recovery. He was speaking Thursday in the sidelines of a memorial and Thanksgiving service to mark the second anniversary of the passage of Hurricane Maria.
In the Bahamas, be strong. Look to Dominica as your example, as your motivation, as your inspiration. We ask the leaders of the Bahamas to allow us to help them. We're sending a contingent of Dominicans over maybe in the next week, police officers, a lot of volunteers. People have just come forward, tradesmen, carpenters, masons, plumbers, electricians, nurses have just come forward and said they want to go to the Bahamas because they want to share our rebuilding and recovery experience with our fellow Caribbean brothers and sisters. Dominica's experience is not just for Dominica, but it's for the rest of the Caribbean, the region, and the world, because those weather systems are going to be more frequent and more ferocious in the future. So all of us have to embrace and to grasp this whole climate resilient philosophy and ethos, because this is the new norm. This is what we now live. This is our lives, not only us in Dominica, but the rest of the Caribbean. So we see ourselves as the forerunners, the forebearers, but also those who will bring hope and inspiration to those who will experience that kind of destruction in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Still to come, police in Trinidad and Tobago warn women in the island not to fall victim to online marriage scams. Now stay with us. More news after this.
So we've added the garlic and the pepper that we pounded in a mortar. Put some water to make our paste. Time for our curry paste now. Okay guys, so we're gonna add our fish now. It's time to add the fish. The bongo mary.
Labra got its name from the Spanish Terra de Brea. They use the pitch mainly for road building and airport runway. 75% of the lake is in a solid state where you can walk and where they mine. And 25% is in a liquid state, which is known as the mother of the lake or natural bitumen. This is where we start our adventure.
The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is issuing a caution to women in the Twin Island Republic not to fall victim to frauds online using promises of marriage to get money out of them. The warning comes amid an increase in reported scams, and not just marriage scams, as we hear from Acting Superintendent Kurt Simon of the Fraud Squad in this report from TV6's Uvashi Tuwari Rupnarayan.
Women are being promised to be married, that the man is going to marry you, and he is showing you pictures of wedding dress, rings, shoes, even pictures of dresses for the bridesmaids, and sending it to you in a package. And the women are very happy. They began making wedding plans. And then they are told, look, there's a problem with the goods being held up at a certain place. And if they can send a certain amount of cash to clear the goods, and they are sending the cash, sometimes up to $40,000 to get their wedding dresses.
Only to never hear from the groom again. A number of women have been entering police stations across the country in an emotional state.
The women are coming in, they are very emotionally distraught, distressed by this, and I just want to warn you, women especially, please try and avoid being taken online.
But Superintendent Simon says women aren't the only ones being scammed. When it comes to land fraud, he says if a deal seems too good, it probably is.
I mean, land in Trinidad is never cheap, and yet persons are responding to cheap land deal offers. I'm speaking about things where you get $250,000 off and so on a lot of land.
His squad recently closed a case where one plot was sold to 14 different buyers. The scammers swindled a total of $2.5 million.
We have a lot of instances with persons buying swampland from individuals who are doing the deal in a sleeveless and a rubber slippers on their feet. Come on.
Vehicle transactions, he says, is another way locals are swindled, but the preferred method of fraud remains at the ABM, like one detected just last night.
We arrested 8 persons, 7 of them being Venezuelans, 1 local. This arrest occurred in the St. Augustine Police District. These persons were observed tampering with an ABM machine in a popular mall in East Trinidad. And from the arrest and search of premises and so on, we were able to get a number of what appears to be counterfeit ABM cards, amounting to over 100 of them.
For 2019, there have been 664 cases of ABM fraud, amounting to some $4.5 million in losses. The superintendent is today urging members of the public, when it comes to monetary transactions, you can never be too careful.
The Bahamas Public Service Union is expressing dismay at the announcement by Deputy Prime Minister Peter Turnquest that the government is putting on hold its plan to give lump sum payments to union members in the wake of Hurricane Dorian. Union President Kingsley Ferguson said it was irresponsible of Turnquest, and the union feels blindsided by the decision. We get more in this Eyewitness News report.
We're not going to sit idly by and allow the government to hand us whatever it is they see fit. You can't muzzle the ox that tread on the corn.
Bahamas Public Services Union President Kingsley Ferguson irate after Deputy Prime Minister Peter Turnquest told reporters Tuesday that lump sum payments for civil servants may be delayed due to Hurricane Dorian.
So at the moment it's on hold, and we'll see how we can adjust it. Maybe to see looking towards the end of the year to see how we can maybe fit it in. But certainly there's no lack of desire to want to do it. I think we've demonstrated that. It's just a matter of being practical and reasonable within the commitments and expected expenditure outlays that the government will have to make over the next couple of months.
Ferguson, however, telling Eyewitness News that this option was never presented to the union.
And in the face of what the Bahamas has already experienced, we understand, but at the same token, we don't intend to be taken for granted. And so we're expecting an apology from the Deputy Prime Minister in that regard.
Now, in late August, the BPSU withdrew their labor and march in protest to downtown Bay Street after government refused to budge on the payment of $1,200. This after some discussion was made. It was agreed that the public servants would receive the payments in 2 installments. Now, there have also been reports that government would now be offering loans to public service workers in the wake of the storm. But Ferguson said again, nothing has been communicated.
Today, while I don't want to really discuss the funding issue, we do have a position on that, because I'm of the view that if you can loan persons money, that means you have monies to pay. This is something I'm hearing as well. And so there has really been no consultation with the union in that regard. If persons didn't have money prior to now, and you want to cause them to commit to particular things where their salaries may be below the debt service ratio. That is a concern.
Now, Ferguson says repeated attempts to contact the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister on these issues have been unsuccessful. If a resolution does not come about, and soon, Ferguson says union members won't shy away from taking action.
And ahead in Newsline Sport, Guyana Amazon Warriors continue their unbeaten run in the Caribbean Premier League season. Stay with us. Sport is next.
When you think of what we went through with Hurricane Irma, you had to be able to recognize what are the things we need to do to cope with the aftermath. The psychological trauma, to me, is probably the most telling on a lot of people.
Preparedness is the key. So when people are prepared, when people have their resources in terms of how they can cope with the disaster, they're better able to be able to return to their normal life. They're better able to make decisions that are informed for themselves and for their family, and then for their community. Be ready. Look, listen, and link.
Nighttime events in the corporate area are facing heat from the authorities, with early cutoff times being imposed on promoters of events. The music and entertainment industry has responded. We caught up with 3 industry practitioners who gave us their thoughts on the actions by the authorities.
Welcome to a brand new program called A Day in the Life of. This is where we take on different occupations around St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Today, we will be taking on the role of an ECGC worker, more so in the rice mill. Well, I just completed my course delivery at ECGC. Yes, it was a day.
Red-hot Guyana Amazon Warriors extend their unbeaten start to the Caribbean Premier League season while inflicting yet another blow to Jamaica Talawa's playoffs hopes with a commanding 81-run victory on Wednesday night. Sent in at Sabina Park, Amazon Warriors marched to 218 for 6 of their 20 overs, their highest ever CPL total, with captain Shoaib Malik top scoring with a classy unbeaten 67 of 37 deliveries and Brandon King slamming 59 of 37 in front of his home crowd. In reply, Talawas got 40 apiece from New Zealander Glenn Phillips and explosive all-rounder Andre Russell. But the hosts struggled to keep up with the demanding required run rate and were eventually bundled out for 137 in the 18th over. The win for the visitors was their 5th on the trot, securing them sole possession of first place in the standings on 10 points. And West Indies women predictably suffered their second straight series whitewash at the hands of powerhouses Australia women when they went down by 9 wickets in the final T20 International of the 3-match series on Wednesday night. In yet another lopsided encounter at Kensington Oval, West Indies could only muster 81 all out of their 20 overs, with opener Brittany Cooper top scoring with 29 of 35 balls to be one of just 3 batsmen in double figures and the only one to pass 20. The hosts were undone by left-arm spinner Jess Johansson, who snatched 4 for 7 from her 4 superb overs, while 20-year-old leg spinner Georgia Wareham supported with 3 for 14. New ball seamer Megan Scott picked up 2 for 14. In reply, the Aussies strolled to their target in the 8th over, with player of the series Alyssa Healy belting a 16-ball 38 and opening partner Beth Mooney gathering an unbeaten 24 of 18 deliveries. Switching sports now, the man who made history by swimming from Barbados to St. Lucia says he's grateful for the team which accompanied him on the record-breaking 150-mile swim. Cameron Bellamy recounted his experience at a press conference where he also revealed he had a moment of insanity. Choice TV's Natasha Polion reports.
Cameron Bellamy navigated between Barbados and St. Lucia in a 56-hour swim to raise funds for his charity as part of the Abunye Challenge, as well as charities in St. Lucia and Barbados. During a press conference to mark the occasion, the senior marketing manager of the St. Lucia Tourism Authority expressed her thanks to the swimmer for making St. Lucia a part of his swim for charity.
Watching you swim and watching what you endured as an athlete, and that we were your final destination to welcome you back has been incredible. So we want to thank you, welcome you, and tell you that you really are a testament to human endurance and what the body can go through. And really, we are very, very happy to be part of your journey. I hope in the time that you've been here, you've been able to rest a little bit, and I hope you come back.
Visibly tired and still dehydrated from the historic channel swim, Bellamy spoke about his experience in the water.
For a lot of the swim, it's just like you're just kind of just being a piece of the water and just keep going, keep going, keep going. And obviously I've trained so much that I can kind of move my shoulders over like for 56 hours. But it gets to a point at about, the halfway stage, like for me, this swim was 30 hours in, where it becomes intolerable, like the pain becomes kind of unbearable. And this time it was the heat that was the main thing. I think Saturday, midday to about 3 p.m., there was no wind out there. It was extremely hot air temperature, and obviously the water is extremely warm too. And I didn't know where I was. I remember I was like swimming. I had a kayak, my kayak to my right, Chris was to my right, and the boat was ahead of me. And I was just swimming, I just kept seeing the boat, and I was like, I actually kind of lost my sanity a bit. And started getting really dizzy and started swimming very slowly. And going to the boat, and I was like, I didn't tell them how I was feeling, but like Christina, she noticed that I was looking really bad. And so we get to a stage like that, you need your support crew to help you. And that's in that instance, the next 2 hours, we did very short changeover swims, short changeover. I was feeding a lot more, and that was kind of bringing me in, feeding me a lot more cold water, and I was getting me cold water over my head. And so for the next 3 hours, that's keeping me cool, keeping me motivated. And then about 3 o'clock, I kind of came through that, and I was fine again.
And that's the sport. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Again, the major developments of this day: Guyanese await a date for elections as the Elections Commission advises the president it will be ready by February 2020. And in sport, Guyana Amazon Warriors continue their unbeaten run in the Caribbean Premier League season. That's Caribbean Newsline. For news and sports round the clock, subscribe to CaribNews.com for more for our program, and log on to CaribVision.tv and check out our YouTube channel. We'll be back here again tomorrow, but from all of us at CMC News, thank you for watching. Have yourselves a good evening.